Hi, I'm Dr. Felice, and I'm so happy to join you to discuss a very important topic, osteoporosis in menopausal women. Turns out that 80% of osteoporotic fractures occur in women, and over half of women will develop a fragility or osteoporotic related fracture during their lifetime. So, this is a huge problem, and bone health is important to every woman. And what happens when women go through menopause? Well, they lose ovarian function and the production of that vital life hormone called estradiol. That's the form of estrogen that the ovaries make. Well, it turns out that an organization called the American College of Physicians came out just a week or so ago with new guidelines, their new updated guidelines for how to care for women, and this is by doctors, women with osteoporosis in the menopause years. And guess what? They did not include anything about use of estrogen, not one word. And to me, this is literally criminal. Their recommendations calls for a first line of treatment utilizing a class of drugs known as bisphosphonates. Bisphosphonates are drugs that act to block the action of the specially embedded immune cell called the osteoclast within bone. This particular cell is designed to gobble up, phagocytize, old, yucky, dead, and dying bone. Because bone is living dynamic tissue, and it has to go through this process continually called remodeling, out with the old and in with the new. The old yucky bone has to be eliminated by the osteoclast, and the new fresh bone laid down by a group of specialized cells called osteoblasts. Well, it turns out that estrogen regulates, modulates, controls all of these cell types. And when you don't have enough estrogen, which will occur universally in women as they go through menopause, especially if they don't get hormone therapy, then these cells no longer function properly. The osteoclasts in menopause gobble up indiscriminately bone, and the osteoblasts just don't work to lay down new bone. Well, this group of drugs called the bisphosphonates, they basically paralyze the osteoclast so they can't gobble up the old bone. That sounds good on the surface, but they don't enable new bone to be put down. So at first, it seems beneficial. The old bone just stays there. It stays calcified, but it's like old, dead, calcified, petrified bone. The calcium matrix, all the minerals, they stay there. But bone, as I said, is living dynamic tissue. So the bone to which these minerals are bound, that dies, but the mineral stays. So think of it like a skeleton that's in the corner of a gross anatomy lab. There's no human that's surrounding those bones. It's just a skeleton hanging on a rack. That is not healthy bone. That is dead bone. And that is what happens if you stay on these drugs, bisphosphonates, long enough. You end up with a lot of dead bone and you don't get new fresh bone. And that's why these drugs are only approved to be used for 5 years. And then, listen to this, the pharmaceutical companies came up with this amazing tagline. After 5 years, because it's so unhealthy to stay on those drugs, because they paralyze this bone remodeling process, so you can't get new bone and you can't even get rid of the old yucky bone, you end up with what they tell you to take, a drug holiday. I mean, talk about good wording for a bad process. The drug now is too toxic to continue taking because you end up with too much dead bone. You're not getting fresh bone. So they say, instead of saying it's really imperative that you stop taking it, they say, go on a drug holiday. Oh my goodness. Well, the second line drug that they want to recommend is called Prolia, denosumab. That is a type of immune modulator that works on those immune cells. The osteoclast, it's a different mechanism, but the outcome is comparable. You block the action of the osteoclast so that they can't gobble up the old bone. So over time, the same thing kind of happens. You end up with a lot of dead bone. Now, this drug Prolia has a special feature. When you stop using it, you lose bone by the truckload. So there's no exit strategy. You can't ever go off of this drug because if you go off of it, all your bone just disappears. It's a huge problem. Also, because it's an immune modulator, you increase your risk of some serious infections, particularly involving skin and the bladder. So these are what they're recommending as first-line treatment for osteoporosis. What would I recommend? Well, first line is prevention. That means that when you're just at the point of going into menopause, the perimenopausal years when your estrogen levels are declining, that's the time to start seriously discussing starting hormone therapy. Go on some estradiol. Even if you're ovulating, I can measure how much estrogen is being produced using menstrual mapping or even spot testing with serum levels. And when it gets too low, it just needs more. The bone needs more. Everything needs more. So we can give human bioidentical estradiol. And then when you stop ovulating, we can add in progesterone. That is the best way to go because estrogen, in the form of estradiol, not only controls those osteoclasts, those immune cells that gobble up the bone, but also control the osteoblasts, the cells that lay down the bone. So you have this beautiful continuing dynamic of old yucky bone being taken away and beautiful new healthy bone being laid down, the way bone is supposed to work. So that is my recommendation, along with all the lifestyle things like getting enough adequate protein of the highest quality, a lot of it coming from plants like beans, nuts, seeds, whole grains, adding in lots of good resistance training exercise to put some weight on those against those bones to help them promote growth. And of course, controlling for stress, getting sleep. And with the diet, also not only having adequate protein, but phytoestrogens, the magical ingredients, I call them the magic sauce of plants that can bind to estrogen receptors and actually promote a lot of the benefits that estrogen would naturally give. By doing these things, we can not only grow new bone, we will also prevent osteoporosis in the first place. Prevention is worth an ounce, what is it saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, there is no cure for osteoporosis. The best thing is prevention. But if you have osteoporosis, you can still go on hormones and be aware that if you are prescribed those drugs, that there's a lot of downside. So give it some thought. You have to weigh the pros and cons. That's what informed consent is all about. So women, you guys can have really strong bones for the duration of your life. Talk to your doctor or come and talk to me. I run a practice, the Integrative Medical Group of Irvine. So good luck to all. Go have great protein. Lots of hormones are in those phytoestrogens. They're not real hormones like estrogen, but they act like pseudo ones and keep those bones strong as well. And then when it's appropriate, take human bioidentical hormones. That's it. Bones are really important. Bones really matter. See you soon. Bye.